The M4 MacBook Air is Apple's best-selling laptop for many reasons. And today I'm going to share with you why you should really consider the M4 MacBook Air if you're either coming from an Intel Mac, the M1 MacBook Air, or if you're even considering switching over from Windows, and why this machine is the best laptop to get you into the Apple ecosystem. One of the most important factors when considering purchasing a MacBook is the price. Now, for years, Apple has had the reputation that their products have a premium attached to it. And I will say that in the case of either the MacBook Pro or the MacBook Air, once you start speccing up beyond the base model, the price is definitely going to start to creep up on you. However, Apple did something different with the M4 MacBook Air. Previously, the M3 MacBook Air had 8 gigabytes of RAM and they were charging $1,100 for that laptop. With the M4 MacBook Air, Apple reversed their steps a little bit, and instead of charging $1,100, they also brought it back down to a $1,000 price point, and in addition to that, they gave you 16 gigabytes of RAM without increasing the price. Now, because Apple removed that barrier of the 8 gigabytes of RAM being the entry point, the 16 gigabytes of RAM is definitely going to make you feel a lot more comfortable when using this laptop, and it's going to last you for a little bit while longer because you do have that extra headroom in terms of the RAM. One of the great things about the M4 MacBook Air is that you can often find it on sale. And right now you can get the brand new base model with 256 gigabytes of storage and 16 gigs of RAM for $800. And buying any Apple laptop at that price point is just absolutely incredible. The only caveat that I have about that is the base storage. So at 256 gigabytes of RAM, if you want to store any media directly on top of your laptop, you should consider upgrading to 512. However, if you're going to use this computer mostly as a web browsing machine or streaming media services such as Paramount Plus, Hulu, Netflix, or any other streaming service, and if you also listen to your music, say using Apple Music or Spotify, or if you have a bunch of videos and movies transported onto something like a network attached storage device, then streaming all of your media directly to this laptop with 256 gigabytes of storage is going to be enough. However, as I say, if you want to start pushing the system just a little bit, if you want to do things in GarageBand or iMovie or any other larger projects or files that you want to store locally, in that case point, I would strongly recommend upgrading to the 512 gigabyte internal storage. Because once you start doing media stuff or doing really storage intensive projects, that's when you're going to feel the crunch of only having 256 gigabytes of storage in your system. One of the main reasons why you should pick up the 13-inch M4 MacBook Air is because of its size and portability. Now, this laptop is so thin and light, you can take it in and out of any bag and you're not going to notice any weight difference as you're carrying it around. So this is a great MacBook if you want to go to a coffee shop, if you want to use it on an airplane, or if you just need to be out and about in the field. This laptop is definitely not going to weigh you down. So speaking of airplanes, the 13-inch MacBook Air is the perfect size for an airplane tray table. And if you want to carry anything heavier, like say the 15-inch MacBook Air or even the 16-inch MacBook Pro, that is definitely not going to be able to fit on any airplane tray table, at least when you're flying in coach. So when it comes to ultimate portability, the M4 MacBook Air 13-inch is definitely the way to go. Just because this laptop is so thin and light doesn't mean that they sacrificed on build quality. And the reason why I've been buying Macintosh computers for over 22 years is because the build quality of every Apple laptop that I've owned has been exceptional. And when it comes to this M4 MacBook Air, when you look at the tolerances of the system, when you feel the hinge and how easy it is for it to lift up, when you work with the trackpad and you understand that you're using an all glass trackpad with a haptic engine, and that is the best trackpad in the industry, when you feel the feedback of the keys when you're typing, you can tell 100% through and through that even though you can get this laptop for $800, there is simply no comparable equivalent in the PC side that can match the quality of this system that you're getting in this M4 MacBook Air. Finally, there's performance. Now, I built this channel on Apple Silicon. When I rebooted the channel back in 2022, I was using the M1 MacBook Air with 16 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage. And if I'm being honest with myself, I could have kept that computer for another 2 or 3 years. So when it came to the M4 chip, I wanted a little more headroom and speed, especially when it came to transcoding movies in Handbrake or doing some of my edits in Final Cut Pro. And I will say that when you start to flex the power of this chip, you are going to notice that the chip is definitely faster in processor intensive tasks compared to the M1. Now, if you're just doing normal, mundane, day to day stuff like email, web browsing, watching videos, or doing the basics, you are not going to feel any difference whatsoever between the M4 and the M1. However, I'm still going to recommend that you pick up the M4 Air because that M4 chip is going to be able to stretch out a little bit longer and you're going to get more life and usage out of that system. But when it comes to 90% of your tasks, even for myself, the M4 Air is actually definitely overkill. So, and the other thing that's great about these systems is that there's no fan inside of the Air models. And that's the main reason why I decided to choose the Air over the MacBook Pro, is because of completely silent computing. And I knew that the fan would be very distracting, and I really wouldn't get that much performance difference or a better workflow comparing this system to a MacBook Pro. And I would have been spending more money than I needed to if I went up to the MacBook Pro. In my opinion, the M4 MacBook Air is as close as you're going to get to the perfect laptop. And when you look at the price to performance ratio of any computer under $1,000, you really cannot beat the M4 MacBook Air. One thing I wish Apple would change, however, is increasing the base storage from 256 up to 512 gigabytes, because I believe that 256 really isn't enough. And if they did bump it up to 512 gigabytes, and if you do start running out of room at that storage tier, you can always expand using external SSDs or external hard drives. But overall, for what we're looking at here in 2025 and the value that you get out of a MacBook Air, I really do think it is as close as it can come to the perfect consumer laptop for everyone out there. And if you really do want to stretch it out a little and flex the M4 chip just a little bit, it definitely gives you enough headroom and performance to where you can use this computer for practically anything that you're going to do. All right, that's about it. Peace.